Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video we're going to be going over some really strong league start currency making options that you guys can work towards while you're rounding out your Atlas. We're not going to be talking anything high end here, we're going to be keeping that for later, but we're going to talk about some of the newly buffed and of course some of the nerfed nodes on the Atlas passives, as well as a few other really powerful options that are popping up as well. Okay, so first of all, I want to talk about the Atlas passives. So we're going to go through a few of these, and we're going to talk about which ones you should pick up as your first 4 or 6 points and kind of focus on to kind of make a little bit of currency. Alright, so the first one I want to talk about here is Essence. So Essence is going to be incredibly powerful with the coming league due to the increase in demand for Delirium Essences from all the damage over time builds that just got buffed. So Delirium Essences are not going to be that common, but there's also going to be demand for a number of other essences for crafters, and I think it's going to be just as good, if not better than it was previously in other patches. And with the essence on the map device, it's going to be even more powerful. So if you guys didn't know, you can pay a token amount, I believe it's 3 chaos, to acquire 3 additional essences in your maps, and they're also going to inherit the increase in essence tier from the essence nodes on the Atlas, meaning it's going to be incredibly powerful and definitely something you guys should look into pursuing if you're trying to make a little bit of early currency. The only issue with this is that if you don't get the essences which do sell well, you might falter a little bit for a few runs, but once you do get a certain amount and a certain size of essences in your disposal, then generally they will sell reasonably well in bulk. Only downside being is if there's no demand early on, it may be a little bit too slow to kind of ramp up fast, but as a kind of more sustainable strategy, kind of working into day 2 and 3, this will be a very good pick, and certainly in the first week, this will be an excellent pick. And let's look what else is available in Haywire Hamlet though. So Harvest is always going to be a massive money maker for experienced players. If you know what you're doing and you know how to make use of Harvest through cluster crafting, through influence ring crafting, through amulet crafting, or any sort of thing like that, it's going to be a massive money spinner. And of course, you can combine this with Essence and run both at the same time. Having the ability to take both the Essence nodes as well as the Grove's Call will give you a very good chance of getting very kind of frequent harvests, as well as still cashing in on the massive amount of essence from the map device as well as the passives. So this combo is going to be incredibly potent early on, and I fully expect a lot of people to take advantage of it. Okay, so moving on, you can also, if you're not super into kind of Harvest, spec into Metamorph, with the primary one you're looking at here trying to take is Escaped Experiment, giving you a 50% chance at a watered down Metamorph per map. This is powerful, but it's nowhere near as powerful as Essence and Harvest for money making potential, but if you're not too up on selling essences and you're not super experienced in crafting, Metamorph will be the play here. Furthermore, you can look into Betrayal. So a lot of builds are going to be needing a lot of specific crafts from Betrayal. Betrayal overall was buffed. You accumulate the crafts a lot faster, but there will certainly be I suppose a market for Katarina items veiled. So you acquire the items from the masters and you sell them veiled, and crafters as well as other players will buy them to try and unveil the modifier they need. I, for example, myself, I'm going to be buying Katarina amulets to unveil so that I can get a modifier for my build that I really, really need. So it's definitely going to be a reasonable choice. In addition to that, you also do get all the perks of Betrayal and all of the things that it has to offer, of which there is a lot. Especially if you do the Mastermind, you can get a ton of very powerful items, which are always in demand. So Betrayal is definitely going to be a good one as well. The only limiting factor here is going to be the missions, but overall, it will not be a bad choice to kind of pick that up. So those are the kind of main ones that I want to highlight here. Ritual can be good, but it's not going to be anywhere near as good as the other ones early on. Okay, let's go into Glennick. So Glennick has a few interesting opportunities for us here. The first one being Abyss. So of course, if you get in really early, we're talking day 1 or 2, you can farm up a storm and sell Abyss jewels on high item level bases, as well as Stygian vices, which are going to be your primary means of income, as well as some of the Abyss uniques do sell reasonably okay, but primarily those are going to be what you're going for there. Of course, the Abyss monsters do drop a reasonable amount of maps as well as loot, but primarily it's going to be the bases that you're going to be making your money off. Definitely nowhere near on the level of, example, an Essence or a Harvest, but it is, you know, something you could look into. The other two that you want to maybe look into doing here in Glennick early on is going to be Incursion. So Incursion does have a, you know, reasonable amount of money associated with doing the temples, as well as, you know, some loot from the actual bosses. But the thing that would probably be the real thing that you're looking for here is the vials off of the Volumnitect. But I don't believe that there's that much demand as opposed to previously when, for example, the Trapper Gloves or the belt were very popular. But that could change. One to keep an eye on. Not something I would go super duper hard after though. The one that you do want to look into if your build can do it is Legion. Even with the nerfs, Legion is quite a competitive choice. Obviously, they took Emblematic off, and then they also nerfed face-to-face, meaning that you don't get the double amount of splinters from the Legion generals anymore. This is going to require a very specific build, most likely some form of occultist with Ignite or something to do early. But, you know, if you get to it early and you're able to sell those first few emblems to the people who are doing the emblem farming in groups, you can make absolute bank, so it can be quite a good one. However, it is very, very difficult. So Glennick, honestly, early on, not a super powerful area, unless there's some form of really big chase unique in Incursion. But overall, Glennick not looking too good for early on. Alright, let's move into Lyra Thane. So Expedition is newly placed in Lyra Thane. It's going to be a powerful choice. Through Rog Crafting, Gweden Gambling, and of course 2-gen currency making, coupled with logbooks as a massive incentive and always which will pay their worth, it's definitely looking at like a very good pick. The Atlas passives are powerful. They are very, very strong. You can see here I value these two more than Ancient Writings, but that's more than enough to get your money's worth. However, there's no way to deterministically force this, so it's not going to be powerful as something like an Essence, but it is still good to look into and definitely good to spec into. However, I do believe there's probably more powerful options in Lyra Thane. But later on, and you know, if there's a market for it, you might be able to get some very, very powerful currency making if you're good at using Rog. So next up we have Heist. So Heist is going to be a massive deal. We'll talk about it after we get through the Atlas passives, but it's fair to say a lot of people are hyping up Heist. If you're interested in the nitty-gritty of Heist, I believe Spicy Sushi did a video on this, detailing a pretty interesting strategy, but I'll link that down below if you're interested. I haven't watched the whole video, but a lot of people are telling me to check it out, so maybe you guys should too. But Heist is always going to be a good one. Contracts will sell all league long, and blueprints will also be a very, very sought-after thing. So Heist is good to just slap on there, but it's not something I would actively chase and go after as a strategy. It's kind of just a little bit of extra juice on your 8th and 10th set of points. You know, 8th point and 10th point, you know, the notable, if you kind of get what I'm saying here. So next up we have Bestiary. So Bestiary, unfortunately, is generally dominated by multi-boxes. However, multi-boxes don't come online for quite a little bit. So you can actually get mass value from Bestiary if you're willing to run it early and you have access to either Einar missions or Scarabs, both of which can be a little bit hard to obtain. But, you know, if you do get into it and you do get a Spirit Beast like a Farrell, a Thanamis, a Sakawal, these can be worth massive amounts of currency. You know, you can score like an X, you know, each. In addition to that, Cricket Chimeras are also going to be big value, as well as Phenomenal Plague and Arachnids. They'll still be very powerful as well. Splitting is nerfed, but it's not dead. So Bestiary is a good choice, and the Bestiary nodes got absolutely gigabuffed, with basically every single good node for Bestiary being in one place. It's completely insane, and it's one of the standout changes from 3.16. So you got Big Game, Great Migration, and Natural Selection. A massively crazy potent combo. Even without Watchstones, you're going to be massively juicing it up in here. But again, it's not deterministic. You can't force it with the map device, so it's going to lose out to something like Essence. Next up, you've got Breach, though. Breach is going to be one to keep an eye on. So Breach is on the map device. You can get it early, and it's only 2 Chaos. In addition to that, Breach Stones got buffed. They now drop bubblegum currency, as well as maps and other things like that, similar to Synthesis maps. So they're massively improved, and demand for Breach Stones and their overall value in the market should also increase with that buff. Meaning stuff like Ash Splinters, and all sorts of stuff like that will just be worth more. However, we've also seen buffs to the Breach Uniques, which is going to obviously maybe see a few people wanting to try and pick up some of those items, and there's more incentives to go after them. Skin of the Lords being one of the ones that I've definitely got my eyes on. Of course, Chayla, Unatul, and Zoth are always pretty big. Tul also following close behind. There's definitely going to be a lot of Ignite builds probably on their way. So I imagine that there's going to be demand for the Breach Uniques, and as such, there's going to be demand for the Breach Stones. So overall, Breach will still be a solid pick. With the removal of Flash Breach, breach's extra monsters, it does see a bit of a hit. It's not going to be quite as good as it was going to be. It's still going to be good though. However, this does heavily influence what map you're going to want to run it on. You're going to want to run it on an open layout, as you're not guaranteed to get the rares anymore from flash breaches. It's no longer pretty much viable at all to run this on a toxic sewer or something like that. So you're definitely going to want to be picking open layouts. And if we kind of take a look, what do we got here for open layouts in Lyra? We got Shore, Racecourse, those Mud Geyser. These are all pretty good. You can kind of take a look at my tier list here and kind of just pick on the open layouts. Those are going to be your picks, and those are going to be the most powerful. I've definitely got my eye like keenly on Racecourse there. Very, very nice. And I still do think that Breach is very competitive, with it basically being 2C on the map device. You don't have to buy Scarabs. It's going to be super accessible, and it's going to be good in my opinion. Next up, we have Invasion, something that is honestly always underestimated. For me, at least, what I'm probably going to go with is Breach, and then maybe some Invasion action. Or failing that, I might go Breach with Heist, or Breach with Expedition. I haven't decided quite yet, but Invasion is definitely something I'm looking into. It can drop 6 links, 5 links. It can drop Scarabs. It can drop stacks of currency, and it can drop a ton of really nice stuff, and it does add up. You know, if you're doing 100 maps, you know, you might get like 30 Scarabs from that. It can be quite good, and it's definitely nothing to scoff at, and I think that it is potentially worth taking as your 8 and 10 point kind of investment there, but you definitely do need to kind of think about that a little bit. Okay, in Valdo, early game options, what do we got here? So Delirium's not really going to be too relevant early on. You know, okay, we don't have really any way to deterministically farm the Delirium Mirror, and a lot of the value doesn't really get there from the Delirium Orbs when you're looking at what we got here on Valdo. So the only mod that applies for Delirium Orb farming, like 1 orb farming, is this one up here. Yeah, okay, so you get some extra cluster jewels, you get some extra uniques, and you also get some splinters, but that's only from the bosses, and bosses aren't guaranteed from 1 orb, so this isn't going to be a very good pick early on. Next up, Harbinger. This is going to be a good pick early on. So 1 guaranteed extra Harbinger per map is massive. You're going to be getting maps you can sell. You're going to be getting currency. Even the Chaos Shards are going to be okay early on. You can get some extra Chaos that way. And then, of course, you're going to get stuff like Harbinger Orbs. You know, Exalted Shards here and there, not too bad. And overall, it's going to be really, really powerful. Of course, Diplomatic Escort, as strong as ever. Well, not as ever, but as strong as it was last patch. It's definitely going to be a competitive choice because it is deterministic. You will get 1 extra Harbinger on a map. It's a guaranteed thing. So very, very strong there. I'm a big fan of Harbinger still. Okay, next up, Ambush. Overall, it's kind of weak. There's not really any sort of exclusive reward that comes from it. It's just a few extra monsters. Don't recommend it. Delve. Delve is going to be big. Fossils got slashed from all of the sources, so Delve is going to be the main place you get it. Delve also got buffed. The scaling is faster, so overall, Delve is going to be much more worthwhile. And I'm going to expect to see quite a lot more Delve action. The fossil demand is probably going to go up as well. There's going to be a lot more demand in general for fossils, as they're pretty much one of the best ways to craft. And there's going to be a lot more demand for items that are crafted due to the scourging mechanic being kind of destroying a lot of them or ruining the potential of some of them. So I think the Delve is going to be a pretty solid choice in the early game and the late game. All right, next up, Blight is definitely a solid pick early on. It is on the map device, but it's 8 Chaos, which is kind of expensive. But if you get this in a closed layout, which is the secret to Blight, you can absolutely make infinite money. Well, not infinite. Mega bucks. Let's use that instead. Getting a little excited there. But Blight is definitely one of my top picks here. Obviously, we do see quite an increase to the amount of juice you're getting. A lot of the really good Blight nodes are on top of each other now. They did remove a few really impactful things, but nothing that isn't easily made up for in the combination of both of the areas. So if you're looking at Blight, the map that you want to be doing it on is a closed layout, one where the actual tendrils will all just funnel into a wall and get stuck, so you get basically all your chests as oil chests. That is the secret. Okay, so when I'm looking here, I'm looking for a Blight map. What am I looking for? Okay, so we're taking a look. Really, you want a very, very closed off layout. So as indoor as you can get. We're talking like flooded mine. You know, we're talking like, you know, armory could be okay. You know, try out a few of them. Maybe layer is okay, maybe not though. Basically, you want as few tendrils coming off as possible. Failing that, you can also just go with a good layout and just farm up Blight anyway. It is a good pick, but at 8 Chaos, you're going to have to balance it carefully. Maybe keep your eye on Blight Scarabs, as they do come from heisting quite a lot, and there's going to be a lot of heisters, which we'll get into here in a second here. Okay, so non-Atlas strategies which are going to be competitive. Let's talk about that. So overall, I think I probably missed a few things here, but the main ones I want to kind of focus in on and kind of give you guys an overall kind of bird's eye view of the ones that I really focus on, and that is Essence, Harvest, I would also focus heavily on Breach. You know, if you're confident, you can do Bestiary, but that's kind of a lesser one. And then I'd also focus on Blight. Those are my main ones that I'd focus in on and kind of really try and pay attention to and chase after in the early game if you can get your hands on those Atlas passives early. Okay, let's get into some other sort of meta kind of stuff like here, which kind of feeds off of those strategies, but also feeds into them. So the main one I want to point out here as the one I mentioned earlier is Heist. There's a lot of buzz around what's being called Infinite Heist. So Infinite Heist is basically the idea that you can get to around level 68, so finish your character off, get through the campaign, you can go over to the Rogue Harbor and you can buy all the contracts off the vendor, do all of those heists, and then buy a Book of Regression, which essentially down levels your character again from the level that you just got from all of those contracts, and then you can buy all the contracts off the vendor again and keep doing it, running contracts at level 68 perpetually and sustain it that way and accumulate currency through stuff like the lockpicking contracts and stuff like that. Now, I'm not a massive fan of that because you're not progressing your Atlas, you're not progressing your character, you're essentially just accumulating currency, which, you know, you can do so through other means. Check out Spicy Sushi's video, you can go ahead and take that a look, I'll link it down below. But I do think contracts, if you're not down leveling yourself and you're kind of just running them as you get them, or you're buying them off the vendor as you level up, can be worthwhile. Specifically the lockpicking, which is going to be very, very good, and also the demolition. Demolition yields cluster jewels, and outside of delirium mirrors, there's not really any good source of cluster jewels early on in a league. They basically only come from delirium mirrors and heist. And there's going to be a massive demand for mine, physical damage, damage over time, and those kind of clusters, including burning damage as well, early on. And there's going to be big demand for that. So if you can fill that demand, you're probably going to make a lot of currency, and cluster jewels are abound in Heist as long as you're a little bit persistent with doing the contracts. Now, of course, the challenge is going to be getting those specific contracts only and not having to go into other ones. But, you know, some of the other ones can be okay. You know, there is also uniques you can acquire from Heist by doing the unique focused ones, which I believe is engineering. But overall, Heist is going to be an interesting and good option, in my opinion, for the first few days, as well as obviously later on to the league as things start to come online. So the other one I want to talk a little bit about here is going to be blighted maps. So blighted maps are always going to be a big W. You can always make a lot of money from blighted maps. The tricky part is obviously acquiring them, but with it being on the map device, with the combination of all the passives, they're probably going to be a little bit more available. So blighted maps are probably also something that you can do, which is also quite competitive. Okay, let's get into the more kind of serious juicer kind of side of things. So if you're a really hardcore player and you're pushing hard, you know, and you're really, really juicing up the Atlas, of course, you can rush to T16s, sell the maps down the chain and kind of sell them to everyone else who's trying to progress the Atlas to kind of round out their Atlas. That's going to be less competitive due to the fact there's less maps on the Atlas. It's still going to be good though, but also farming up just T16s in general, T14 plus, is going to be good to accumulate synthesis maps, guardians, and stuff that funnels into the end game bossing kind of side of things. And then, of course, as usual, bossing is going to be, you know, pretty much as good as it's been in the past few leagues, i.e. the earlier you get that, the better. And then obviously the profits fall off as more and more people reach there, but there is still money to be made. So overall, those are kind of my recommendations, guys. In terms of what I'm planning on doing, so due to the fact that my build does need to craft quite a few items in Harvest, and I do need Delirium Essences myself, I'm probably going to kick around in Heroic Hamlet for a while until I get my base set of gear on Kinetic Blast going, and then I'm going to quickly move on over to Lyra, unlock the passives as soon as possible, and really start juicing up Breach, as there's definitely plenty of money to be made there, in my opinion, and there's definitely a lot of opportunity if you can kill the Breach monsters without getting one shot. So that's kind of going to be my plan, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. A little bit of a tip here. One little bit of an update here is that I would not recommend doing Chaos Recipe. In my opinion, it's not worth it. With all of the loot creep we've gotten over the past few leagues, just running another map instead of vendoring those items is going to be better for you. Identifying the rares is going to be better for you. And overall, that's kind of what I would be putting out there for everybody. You know, just one ritual can like net you like 2 or 3 or 4 C. You can get a unique. You know, it's just way better to just play the game than doing Chaos Recipe now, in my opinion. And I've also heard rumors that the Chaos Recipe Enhancer tool that people were using also doesn't work anymore. So just get inside, get some Atlas strats going, you know, slay some monsters, and that's going to be the play, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Spreadsheet will be available down below. We'll touch back on the end game side of things once people have kind of gotten through the maps and once I'm into the end game. Of course, Scourge is the big unknown. We don't know how that's going to play out. But with all that said, guys, if you guys enjoyed, if you learned something, make sure to like and subscribe. Until next time, cheers.